Hello, Happy New Year, welcome. It's the award-winning gutter coming in your ears. Neil Atkinson, John Gibbons and Josh Sexton. And Neil has just clapped to herald in the new year and to launch the show, and he's injured himself clapping.
He's taking up my eardrum as well.
Quite impressive. People don't know there's a little bit behind the curtain thing here. We have somebody's job.
I wasn't injured, I was so impressed with the clap. That was why I pulled the face. It was one of the best claps I've ever produced.
Clapped too hard.
No.
Your face, you look visibly pained.
I was delighted with the clap.
It was a strong
I'm just
clap.
taking the listeners behind the curtain here. Before a show, before you hear the actual magic, it's someone's job in the room to do a clap to sort of mark. What's it for, John? To mark
to sync the audio, because we're videoing it as well. So to sync everything together for audio and video.
So it requires expert clapping.
Yeah.
John's sort of got the rep as the best clapper around him, but Neil's the most committed clapper.
Neil's the young upstart, new to the clapping game.
Yeah, I just don't back myself to clap properly. I think I'd miss my hands under this kind of pressure, so I don't do it. But Neil did it, and well, I thought he did injure himself, but no. But anyway, okay, we're back. It's our new year. It's a chance to, all the awards that have come before, they've all gone. It's a new year. We're not complacent here at the Gutter Award, the previously awarded Gutter Show. There are a new set of awards to win, John. So let's be humble. Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. First item of business is, and it's an inescapable one. There's no scene setting required, really. Trent Alexander-Arnold is the name on all Liverpool supporting lips at the moment, because story after story is breaking about him potentially not signing a new contract, potentially signing for Real Madrid. John, we're going to go right round the houses and back again on this one. We're unashamedly Trent focused for as much of the show as we see fit, because I can bug it if anything else feels as important. From having endured months and months of really rumour and being able to sort of speculate and give our opinions as to how near or not near Trent is to some kind of finishing line here, we now have some sort of hard facts to contemplate and process. The fact is that Paul Joyce and others, I think yesterday, said Real Madrid had offered, I think it's something akin 20 to 25 million pounds to try and tempt Liverpool into parting company with Trent this month. Now, what were your feelings the moment you heard that news?
Well, it's come in two waves, hasn't it? So the first story was that they phoned to say they wanted to buy him in January, and we completely discounted it. The story last night is a curious one for me, because this is where this £20 million things come from. In that the story was that Real are going to come back and they're going to see if £20 million would tempt Liverpool to do it in January. But it came from the Liverpool journalists, which I just sort of find strange, really. Obviously, they keep the cards close to the chest, but I'm interested in how it's come. It's the Liverpool journalists who've leaked that Real Madrid are about to sort of, offer this very specific amount of money. So I mean, maybe that's by the by, but I'm always interested in the mechanics of these things, because I think it is worth trying to work out, well, why are these stories in the papers? Whose benefit sort of is it? And why would that sort of, be the case? I can't really work it out, though, on this one. Like, it's not really in Liverpool's interest.
There was a layer to, sorry, John, to interrupt you. There was a layer to it was said, and Liverpool have rejected it. That was almost in the same breath, if I'm right in saying.
No, Liverpool rejected. All Liverpool have rejected so far was the very idea of selling him. Yeah, this 20 million offer is impending, but the Liverpool journalists knew about it before it had arrived, and so that was what sort of confused me. So this was a follow-up story that came through sort of last night. So why on that? The whole thing, the why on the whole thing. So why has this story come out? Why has it come out from Liverpool's side? Why they bid it at all if they're that confident of getting him for free in the summer is a curious one. Now, obviously, they do need a right back. They're coming right back out for the season, and they're playing a bit of a makeshift, situation sort of in there. They're not doing very well. Do they feel like the season needs a bit of a boost? They did do this with Mbappe. They bid about £100 million for him the year before. They eventually got him for free. So they got a bit of previous, but it did seem a little sort of strange to me, and did sort of suggest that I don't think it's as all as sort of generally as people are sort of making out. And when the story kind of came out, it was kind of used as a to me, it was used to people to confirm what they already had decided. So if you decided that Trent's definitely going, it was like, right, this shows that Trent sort of putting this he's trying to he's trying to manage the narrative. There was a thing that it was him trying to manage the narrative, which feels a little bit unlikely to me. There's a thing where Real Madrid, it is possible that Real Madrid are confident they're getting in this summer, but need a right back now. So we're thinking, well, is it worth us paying a bit more? And I think that's more possible. Or there is another possibility that a lot of people don't seem to be accounting for at all, that it is a sort of a little bit up in the air, and Real Madrid are maybe trying to take advantage of that up in the airness by tempting Liverpool to, if not get him now, make it more likely that they'll get him in the summer. And I think that's a real sort of possibility too. I've been a bit frustrated by people's willingness to dance to Real Madrid's beat, and by people's, I mean our own supporters. I think they're known bellends, and they try this stuff all the time. They've got their own media, which is quite something to have.
Propaganda.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone wants to know that Marse's independentness, I would go on their Twitter and check out what their banner is. And so it is Real Madrid state propaganda. And so I would take everything that comes out of Spain with a degree of a pinch of salt. You could take everything that comes out of England with a pinch of salt if you like, but the only thing that's frustrated me about the whole thing, well, I mean, the ongoing contract thing frustrates me, obviously, but the last few days has been like, we don't all have to go mad because they tell us to. Okay. And so that's been a bit sort of frustrating for me. But obviously, the main thing is we want the contract sorted. But I don't think a load has changed.
Okay. I mean, it's difficult. I'll come to you on this one, Josh. It's difficult to know whether the information we're getting is correct or not. I'd counter John's point slightly, and to you, not to John, but a few days ago there was stuff coming out from Marca and the Real Madrid propaganda organs saying that Trent had committed to Madrid, and at that point I think it was very reasonable to say, as John has said, that yeah, this is Madrid propaganda. We have no idea what the truth is. But when the sort of credible end of the British Liverpool Merseyside-based journalist patch say, look, we believe there's been a bid. We believe there's been a bid. Then you sort of have to sit up and take notice. But trying to form a take on it. There's a bit of a three to tango situation here. Now, this is what I can't resolve in my mind. Is let's take the Madrid bid as fact, or notional suggestion of amount of money they pay as fact. Let's take the idea that Liverpool are hugely unlikely to take the money unless it's silly money at this stage, with the title that they're to be pursued as fact. I've heard some suggest that, and not incorrectly, you'd say, why would Madrid put a bid in without the players' consent? That seems far-fetched. But at the same time, you have to be able to say, in what universe does the player want to move to Madrid in January, whereas whatever else he wants, I firmly believe, and no one will dissuade me otherwise, that this footballer wants to win a title with Liverpool this season. I think he may well want to go and pursue a career in Spain afterwards, but he definitely wants to win a title with Liverpool this season. So those two things don't match up for me. Madrid putting a bid in, the player must have known about it and sort of tacitly consented to it, or even implicitly, or even actually consented to it, but also, why would he consent to it? These things, there's a sort of a paradox there for me.
Yeah, no, I presume there's probably a paradox and a conflict for Trent as well, and that's where I think I agree the most with what John was saying in terms of like how fans have suddenly just gone towards like swaying one way for Trent. Like I've enjoyed the sort of the more dissenting voices to that sort of swell of opinion on social media that, because there's so many people now that I've seen across Twitter and things in the last few days just being basically discounting the fact that Trent's a Liverpool player anymore. Is even if Real Madrid are this in his head by this point, it basically means he's gone, and that's bollocks. Like if Trent is still here next season and he's fighting for titles, then we'll all be behind him, and we're going to be behind him until he's no longer here and fighting for titles this season as well. So I'm pleased that there are a few dissenting voices to that now, because Trent's still our lad. He's still our player. One of the sort of things that does have some sort of merit within those voices and that sort of swell of negative opinion towards Trent is that, you know, his head may be slightly turned by this Real Madrid offer, but it's perfectly reasonable and fair that his head could be turned by this Real Madrid offer, and he's considering that because, you know, Real Madrid are perennial Champions League winners. If you want to win the Ballon d'Or, your best place to do that is at Real Madrid. So if you are Trent, I wouldn't be surprised if he was looking at it and thinking, yeah, you know, there maybe is something for me there, but also the other side of him is doing what we're all doing and going, but I'm a Liverpool lad. I'd love to be at Liverpool my whole career. I'd love to be a captain. Virgil van Dijk's probably about to get a 2-year deal. Does that make my ability to be captain sort of delayed more than I wanted to be delayed into sort of beyond my peak years, if you will? So I can understand that all of that would be going on in his mind, and then, you know, conversely, Liverpool have got motives within this, and that's where I think Liverpool have got motives to release the idea that Real Madrid are now effectively trying to really step up their attempts to tap Trent up, in that they can hopefully force Trent's hand and be like, listen, they're coming in for you now. They're trying all these games. They're playing a dirty game, if you will, in the way that, you know, as John said before, Real Madrid always do in these scenarios. So I understand Liverpool's position in releasing that information as well, because they can maybe force a quicker decision out of Trent, and it can see that, you know, if Real Madrid are, you know, for my money fucking about with £20 million bids because Trent, that is insulting to me in terms of what Trent is worth, then again it sort of gets that opinion back towards the club of the fans of you know, we want Trent to stay, our colours are nailed to the mast here, the deal's on the table for him. Here's what we want, here's what Real Madrid are after, it's up to the player now. And then obviously for Real Madrid, like, you know, all these dirty tactics, eventually, usually they do get their way, and we just have to hope that in this scenario, they absolutely don't.
Well, Neil, I posited on Twitter X, and saying those words sounds incredibly pretentious, but I have to say them because I did, that the way I viewed Madrid's bid, and I'd be interested to you can come back, and a lot of people agreed with me, a lot of people didn't agree with me, a lot of people told me I was a fucking idiot, but I'll put it to you. Basically, there's a love triangle of sorts in play here. Real Madrid on the one corner, Liverpool on the other, and the player, the object of desires. One way Madrid can influence let's just assume, because this has gone on for long enough, that the player is at the very least vacillating, right? Or he's 1 week he's 52 Madrid, 48 Liverpool, and vice versa, or 55, 60, whatever the percentages are. Let's put it this way: somebody said, I'm going to make the decision for you, Trent. It's Liverpool or it's Madrid. He's going to accept it and think there's no bad outcome for me here, right? I think there's no bad outcome for the footballer. I think it's not unreasonable to say that in a simplistic sense. One thing Madrid can do, apart from offering ridiculous amounts of money to push things further in their direction, would be to make Liverpool the disloyal party in this love triangle by tempting them with actual money. Now, we all know Liverpool want to win a league and would not want to sell Trent lightly, if at all. But let's reductio ad absurdum. If Madrid were putting 70 million on the table now, Liverpool would have a decision to make. They very much would. Are Madrid playing a game by trying to show to Trent, perhaps, that they can get Liverpool talking about money and demonstrate to him, perhaps, that he is a commodity at the end of the day?
They might be, but they'll, I think, get very, very short shrift from Liverpool. If there's anything that we've seen from a lot of the ways Liverpool do business, they do it with a lot of quite bold and direct lines. For instance, there had been this conversation, and in fact we had variants on this conversation around Saudi Arabian offers towards Mo Salah when the money was meant to be, oh my God,
true.
No one's saying we'll turn this money down at this point, or things like that. And Liverpool emphatically held firm. Too late in the window. We know what we're about now. We're not interested in this. We're not entertaining this. And that went on. It went on for an extended period of time, and Liverpool held firm for an extended period of time. And I think Liverpool, the thing that I think they've been good at both in conjunction with the previous manager and with the previous sort of sporting setup led by Mike Gordon and Michael Edwards, I think Liverpool are good at basically making policy decisions and sticking to them. This is the way we do things. This is our outlook. I always fall back on they refused to offer Emre Can a new deal because Emre Can wanted a release clause, and they decided we don't do release clauses anymore for anybody. That's it. That's a rule. That's the end of the matter. No more release clauses. We don't think it's in our interests. Player has to leave for free. Player leaves for free. And indeed, one of the grand frustrations that a lot of people have with Liverpool's business and the way they go about things is the number of players who have left Liverpool for free, but it's because Liverpool will not bend on the way in which they see things. And there's a couple of occasions where perhaps they have a little bit more than they'd have liked, but I've either lived to regret that or in the fullness of time have sort of smoothed that decision over. So I don't see a world here where anything Madrid do will be given any sort of any consideration really from Liverpool, up to and including even if things got a bit mad. To be honest,
if the number got silly,
but I think even if the number got silly,
it's unlikely to.
But I think it's very unlikely to because Real Madrid, one of the things that they do, Real Madrid, is they actually try not to splash tons and tons of cash on transfers.
Yeah,
and so I don't think the number would get silly. But even if the number got silly, I could still see a world where Liverpool make a decision. You know, you can go all the way back to effectively the theory around Arsenal hit Luis Suarez's transfer release clause and John Henry just went, nah.
Okay, there's one thing.
We've decided we're just not going to take you seriously, sorry. And I think that as I say, I think there's times where people would see this as being to Liverpool's detriment, but I would be really, really surprised if that got any traction at all with Liverpool.
Let me stay with you on this. Do you think there's a possibility that Madrid might not be appreciating that as substantially as you are, or we may be?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a live chance of that, but then I think there's a lot of people who've run into the way Liverpool want to do things and come out the other side and learned that Liverpool stick to the guns. And there's a lot of people, including players and former players and their representatives. And also, I think that Liverpool quite like to have, as much as we'll make the noise around Liverpool, don't like things to be played out in public. I think Liverpool quite like their policy positions to be played out in public.
Yes. Positioning.
We won't do this. We won't do that. We won't go over that for that player. No, we don't think he's worth that. Because what it means is that the next time you're saying that in a negotiation with someone, they go, well, these people are serious. They've walked away from this. They've done this in the past. They just say what they think. And that's the way in which they're going to go about it. So I think that, and this maybe ever so slightly answers John's point as to in whose interest is it that X, Y, or Z gets out. It could actually be that Liverpool feel like it's in theirs because they want to be the ones who sit there and go, nope. It's another example of Liverpool just going, no, we're not. Whatever it is you think you're doing, we're doing our thing, and this is how we do our thing. So anyone else who ever tries to pull any shit with us just needs to know that we have no time for this.
Principle trumps money. That's Liverpool's
and I think
message.
I think that it has been a part of Liverpool's message on a few occasions. It would have, for instance, been straightforward on a couple of occasions to have given certain players concessions and new contracts to then try and shift them a year later. That's what some other clubs would have done. Liverpool just went, nah, it's all right. See you later. It's not going to work now. We've had our fill. You've had your bit. We all part ways. So I think that, and again, you can like that or not like that as a policy decision. People can agree with it or disagree with it, but it's how Liverpool have gone about things, and I don't see that changing.
Okay, let's try and sort of work through bringing this round on itself and trying to predict if that, maybe that's for you to tell how this is going to play out, John. I've taken it backwards and forwards in my own mind, and I've sort of we've tried to work this through in this initial phase a bit, I think, as well. But what is actually going to play out here? I think we can start ticking boxes and go. Liverpool, as Neil said, I think we've all said, Liverpool aren't accepting any frigging bid this January, and also Trent's not moving this January.
Yeah,
there's too much in play. Now, of course, things could look different in a month's time if we lose our next 3 matches, but as things stand, Trent's going nowhere this season, and Liverpool aren't selling this season. But, and sort of taking it backwards and forwards in my own mind, walking up to doing the show, I thought, do you know what? The narrative around what Trent does or doesn't want as a human being has always as sort of, what's the word, vacillated between, on the one hand, what ambitious young footballer can resist the idea of playing for the most glamorous team in the world alongside the most glamorous set of players in the world in a lovely country and with his best mate, with a team that's going to win trophies because it just bloody well does. That's the one hand. On the other hand, what lad who is a born and bred Liverpool boy, he's a Liverpool squad who could just be on the edge of about to build something special, and he could captain that and be one of the great Liverpool captains of all time. Who could turn that down? So there's two very competing narratives, and I think on their day, each feels as strong as the other. My feeling is, though, if Trent, my feeling today, and it might be different tomorrow.
Yeah,
my feeling
and maybe for him as well.
Maybe for him. Well, maybe there's some answers there. My feeling was, if you're talking yourself into the latter, I'm the boyhood red who wants to achieve it all here. Everything's has been building towards a crescendo of sort of strengthening that position because Liverpool have been getting better. The manager's getting more convincing. everything. If you want to read things moving in that direction, you can certainly see them moving in that direction. Why would you not have said to your agent and people around you before January the 1st, time for chatting's over. We've got to draw a line somewhere. I don't want this disrupting the season. My most important season as a footballer could be, I want us to do a deal. I don't want us to stop quibbling. Let's get their last offer, but our last offer. Let's meet in the middle and let's just get this done. The fact that hasn't happened makes me believe that maybe Madrid have much more of an advantage than I think we want to believe, because I think the silence is what would happen more likely if he wanted Madrid, because he definitely doesn't want. If he is going to Madrid, he's got to PR this in the right way.
So I don't agree with that because none of them have signed. So there's no Real Madrid elements in Virgil van Dijk or Mo Salah as far as we know.
And Virgil's been dead quiet as well.
So I think the idea that... So first of all, there's a few things. I understand your point, but there's a few things I disagree with what you said. You talk about the distraction. I don't think the players think it is a distraction. I think they think when they step onto the pitch, they're fully focused, and there's loads of evidence for that because they're top of the league.
But it's getting ratcheted up a bit now.
It is, but I don't think they think it's a distraction when it matters. I don't think. I don't think Trent and his brother, who's being dragged through the mud in a way that I think is unfair as well. I don't think they particularly enjoyed the last couple of days. I'm sure all the stuff that's being talked about them and stuff like that. I don't think it's nice, but I don't think to call it then a distraction. I think we need some evidence that it's affecting individual performances and team performances. And we're not. We're playing better than ever. We just won 5-0 away a few days ago.
Away,
Trent scored. Mo Salah scored. Virgil's playing great, and so I feel like I don't think they think it is a distraction. I think if anything, there is an argument that this ongoing contract thing has made a couple of them play a little bit better. I think Mo Salah is unbelievable this season, and so I think both the players and the club are more relaxed about the distraction element that I think supporters are. So I think that's probably a little bit of us. And until I see a bit more evidence of that, I think what might happen is if, and I don't think it will, but I think if it started to go wrong, I think, you might... It was a little bit like with the Klopp thing last season. I think once the wheels come off, they really sort of come off. And so that's the danger.
Well, that is a good parallel, though.
Yeah, but it is. But that was great for sort of a while. And so I think as long as things are going well and I think the team's winning, and there's no reason to suggest, because the season is looking so strong, I don't see any sort of period where suddenly there's nothing to play for this season, like what happened with Liverpool last year, and then it started to get sort of really messy. But I think on the point of what this means that in terms of the fact that Trent hasn't signed and it's not been sorted, I just think none of them have, and I think that's we need to sort of remember that when we're talking about it's all a PR war, and it always has been, with these things. Do you know what I mean? Like, some players have won it. Alonso does really well out of leaving Liverpool. Mascherano's the enemy for a while, although everyone's sort of come back to it. Torres does appallingly. The one that Trent most reminds me of is the Sterling one, and that's what makes me laugh about people saying, it's because he's leaving for free. Well, we got £50 million for Sterling, and he almost got fucking chased off the pitch. And so it's irrelevant to me. And so I think... It's all about the sort of the PR, but although Mo Salah's done some stuff that the fans have really enjoyed, and Virgil felt like the easiest one to sort, and Mo Salah's was maybe the more complicated because of the money and the age, but he was coming out making the right noises, and then Trent's got this ongoing thing. The fact is, none of them have signed, and they've all had agreements, and so no, not agreements. They've all had offers, so they've all had offers, and none of them signed. So first of all, we don't know what those offers are. We could, if someone could show us them offers now, we could go, fucking hell, no wonder they haven't signed. Do you know what I mean? We could be taking the piss a bit, in relative terms. Do you know what I mean? For what we feel like their value is. So it could be that. It could be that the contract offers just aren't at the levels of what the players think they're worth, and we could look at them and think, do you know what, fair enough, you should be sort of getting more than that. And so there's so much we don't know, and there's so much that we're not privy to. I think it's really, really hard, and this is where, to come back to Richard's point about getting frustrated about sort of, people making grand, this means this. Like, we just don't know. The only things we do know is that none of them have signed. No three of them have signed. So at the moment, not one of them has received a contract offer from Liverpool that they feel like is acceptable for them to sign. And there's a couple of it might just because they're low, or it might be because they think, do you know what, if we, in Trent's case, if we just play this out a little bit more, we're likely to be in a better position. And nothing's going wrong football-wise. We're top of the league. We're all still mates. Do you know what I mean? The idea of any of them turning on each other, I just think it, is so unlikely, because they all understand the game, you know what I mean? It's all a game, but as long as they're committed on the pitch, the manager's just dead, but he's the most relaxed person in the world about it. You bring it up at a press conference, he just laughs and goes, oh yeah, it's fine. So, you know what I mean? And so, and it seems very genuine. And so I think it is just mainly noise at the moment. And I'd love them all to sign tomorrow and put the noise out, because obviously we'd much rather talk about, what the team are likely to do on the pitch and who's likely to come in and sort of. So it is the ongoingness is frustrating, but I don't feel like at the moment either the players or the manager, or indeed apparently Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, are getting that frustrated.
It's interesting, the timing thing though, Josh. I take on board what John's saying about the noise and we don't know, but I feel we've had exactly these conversations 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. We were able to say those things. Hey, we know what's going on behind the scenes. Everyone's taking their time. Everyone's going to reach a conclusion when they're good and friggin' ready. I somehow think there's a difference, though, in terms of timing and agendas between individuals and a big business that's got a lot of planning to do. Now, okay, Mose needs to think where his kids are going to go to school next year, but he can sort. It's not the hardest thing to sort. If later in the day Liverpool withdraw the contract offer, negotiations break down, and he's got to go and play for PSG next season in Paris, he'll find a nice school for them, right? Same can be said of Trent. Same can be said of Van Dijk. But for Liverpool Football Club, there's three major assets, three players who are spearheading, arguably the three best players in this push for a potentially great season, could not be at Liverpool Football Club next year. And planning for life without them is something you've got to make a decision you're going to have to do or not do at some point. As a business, they have to say there is a cut-off date, and it definitely isn't May the fucking 31st, June the 1st. It isn't that. They'd be insane if they did that. They'd be, we could work backwards and so they're negligent to have got to this point, but we can now say there's a different regime making these decisions directly with Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes. So let's park the past for the time being. They'd be insane to leave it that late. I think they'd be insane to leave it till April the 1st. Give themselves a month to find out they're not having Mo Salah next season. They'd be insane to go to March. What I'm getting at is there's a date here. And it's not, and we had this conversation probably back in August, but now we can reduce this conjecturing around what this date is to a matter of weeks, not months, I believe.
Yeah, it's tricky really, because I think there's examples of that not being the case in the past. Like we've all sat round tables doing shows like this where we talked about Gini Wijnaldum's contract and ex-player whose contract's been expired at the end of the season, been like, oh, there's not a deal on the table, I wonder when this will happen. And then suddenly before we know it, we're saying goodbye to them on the last game of the season.
But you don't know internally whether Liverpool had decided he was walking back in the January. It's the difference in what's PR'd. I'm going to say, forget what comes out, right? Forget how they manage it, the information. When do they actually have to tell themselves they have to make the decision that he's gone or he's staying?
This is where I think Liverpool will just stick to principle, and if it is still up in the air between what the player says, like it comes back to what Neil said before. Like I think Liverpool will be prepared to lose all three of these players, and it'll be a sliding scale, because I don't think there's going to be anything in the Trent negotiation, for example, that compromises any level of principle that Liverpool really have. Maybe the sort of wage cap thing, but I think there's ways and means around that. Like Liverpool have bent to that a little bit in the past to bring in Thiago Alcantara. They then sort of bent it a little bit further to make sure Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah are still the highest earners ahead of Thiago. So I think that's something that Liverpool understand that is sort of malleable. They can play with there. Virgil van Dijk probably is the one who most goes against the principles, because he's 33 years old. He's going to be 34 by the time next season starts. Do you want to offer him a big deal when, we always say about defenders that their legs just go at a moment's notice? Mo Salah, you think, has sort of got the physical gifts and the freakish athleticism enough to keep going, but the club will be having the same thing. He's 32, he'll be 33 by the time next season starts. Is there a bit of a thing about his age and how long we want to give him as well? So this is where I think it will come down to principle, and Liverpool have almost, I almost imagine like a war room where Richard Hughes sat around with Michael Edwards with John Henry or Tom Vernon or whoever FSG sort of send to represent, and gone, we're prepared to lose all three of these lot to stand behind our principles. We don't want to. It's not the same as wanting to. It's just that we are prepared to because we believe that this is the way things should work, and we're always going to stand by this. And we're happy for, as Neil said before, happy for whatever information to go public around that, as long as we're showing that we have this stance and we stand behind that. And that's where I think it will be really sort of interesting around the Trent thing, because the added element in the Trent thing that's not present in the Mo Salah or the Virgil van Dijk thing. Because bear in mind, I chipped in on John's point before to say it. Virgil's been just as quiet really as Trent has. He's been pretty sort of smoke and mirrors every time he's been asked about it. He's said that he likes playing for the club, but sort of always limited that to just being this season, and we've taken it more positively because there's basically not a club on the other end waiting for Virgil van Dijk to sign. So I obviously understand the Trent thing feels very different, and it feels different because he's younger, because he's our boy, and because Real Madrid are now posturing to really make themselves a sort of present and active part of these negotiations by forcing the hand in the way they do. But again, if I could take it back to the sort of war room, I imagine all those heads would be sat around that table going, Real Madrid are also the biggest gang of bullshitters in the entire world, and we're not for 1 second bending to the will of those pricks.
No, I get all that, but I'm going to... Josh didn't want to be pinned on this one, Neil, so I'll try a little bit with you. But I agree, like, let's war game this.
So I'll just come back to it then, Rob.
Go on.
So, because the other thing I think people are starting to worry about, and I'm seeing journalists writing into this as well, which I think is almost not, I don't want to say it's as far as negligent, but I think it stokes that fire as well. Clubs don't agree pre-contract things with anybody anymore. It doesn't happen. The only times you really see it happen is when City sign Brazilians from South America. Like, nobody ever does business where we've signed this lad in January and then he's coming in the summer. Like, yeah, it just doesn't really happen anymore. It happens a little bit with transfers, but that's because it benefits the selling club to keep that player for X amount of time longer. You barely ever see that with Bosman deals anymore. We just don't. Like, Real Madrid didn't sign Mbappe in January. Maybe they did behind the scenes, but Real Madrid signed Mbappe when his contract expired, and there must be something within that for either Real Madrid's benefit or Kylian Mbappe's benefit, Trent Alexander-Arnold's benefit, whoever.
Okay. You're still not going to let me pin you to a date.
That's why I'm saying, like, I think it's the end of the season is the date. I think the last game of the season is the date. I don't think Liverpool have to worry about January.
I think in terms of communication, yes, right? But there's going to come a point, whether it comes from the player side setting a deadline, or I think perhaps more plausibly that the club need to set a deadline earlier than the players, arguably, for the reasons I laid out, in terms of the club has to possibly plan to spend £200 million replacing those three or not. And it has to be deep in negotiations, plausible negotiations, not, we might buy your lads if Trent doesn't sign kind of negotiations, really deep, intense negotiations with clubs from a certain date. And I don't know when that date is, but I will say again and I'm interested in your opinion, Neil, obviously. I think it's a matter of weeks till we're reaching that date. And when we reach that date, I don't think it'll be publicised that X player, Liverpool don't want to sign him or he wants to go elsewhere. But I do think the creep of information will then begin after that point. I don't know. Do you agree there has to be a date that's prior to the end of the season? And two, when would you expect it to be if you do think that?
I think what makes this one different and complicated is the three of them are exceptionally special footballers. So I don't think we're all sat around going, and here's the next Mo Salah, because if everyone knew who the next Mo Salah was, people would be trying to buy the next Mo Salah. If people knew who the next Virgil van Dijk was across the whole of world football, they would be trying to buy that footballer. That would be happening right now. Liverpool had an interest in Lenny Yoro, for instance, last summer. He's ended up going to Manchester United. I think this is why I think this is a little different. I think it's a little different to a Gini Wijnaldum thing, where the club would probably argue they got his replacement in a year before in Thiago, and it all just sort of went from there. I think that it's exception. Like, for instance, there is not a single player really who profiles, certainly until this season, like Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's just not many of them. They're just not knocking around. So therefore it becomes, well, we might do something a little bit different. I think with Salah, I think Liverpool will be continually pursuing the sort of target who could conceivably become Liverpool's first option wide right next season. I don't think that'll have changed. I think that will still be ongoing, and I think it may well still be ongoing if Salah signs. The player I always come back to is Kudus, but Kudus can play a wide range of positions, and that's one of the reasons why I think that Liverpool will have an interest in him, and supposedly he's got a release clause. So to your point of, we don't know what, we can't just rock up and go X. Well, we sort of can if we've said, well, if we know what the release clause is, and it's been publicised enough in enough places to say it legitimately exists and go from there. So I think
you've got to agree with the player as well as the club.
Yeah, you've got to agree with the player, and the player will be speaking to a number of people, but the same moving parts will be in play. Hypothetically at the minute, I mean, Jesus Christ, who are Man City going to try and buy the next 2 windows? No one's got any sense of that really, and it may well be that they're talking to a lot of people all the time. I think that the secret world now, I think, is just so ongoing in terms of people talking and being open and knowing what would work, what wouldn't work. I suspect Liverpool made contact with a large number of players and a large number of agents all the way through the year, and want to know what would it take? Both what would it take for your guy, but also then what do you think it would take for us to agree with the club? What is your sort of sense on that? It might be that they're in touch with clubs. The job doesn't just. I don't think there's just a switch of a flick of a switch, and then suddenly we're trying to sort X out. I think if there's a top quality left-sided centre back out there who's a massive prospect, Liverpool will know about him and will be speaking to his people, and then it might just be whether or not it lines up at some given moment, and Liverpool go and do it. So I take what you're trying to say, and I do think that there is probably something around the March international break where we've heard in the past, and I think Klopp's talked in the past, Klopp talks after the Liverpool first qualified for 2017 in the Champions League in 16-17. At the end of the season, Klopp says a lot of that stuff's already gets sorted. It doesn't matter. We've now got this money. We've already planned this, and I think that's when
he said in 23, by the way.
And so I think it is when plans do begin to sort of firm. Then, on the one hand, but on the other hand, for these 3 footballers, again, in the same way that I've said other things about what I think Liverpool do or don't do, I just don't think Liverpool rock around doing ultimatums. I don't think Liverpool are going to any of the representatives of these 3 footballers and going, "There's a big ticking clock, and it's yes or no by this point." I think that, Liverpool are continually weighing their options up. For instance, to take you what would be your point, and let's use Kudus as an example, Manchester City might just decide, we could do with a lad like that, we're boxing him in January, at which point it might be that Liverpool's have been thinking, we could, if we absolutely had to, replace Salah with Kudus. It might work, it might not. Oh, he's gone now, fucking hell, all right, we need to move our parameter a little bit on Salah for the next. There will be these sorts of ebbs and flows. So I don't think on these 3 there is a sort of a definitive date that says this is where it is. I think also the myth of the 1st of January can sort of be knocked aside now. I think I agree with Josh. If you look, a really interesting thing is if you actually go back to the last time a raft of players left Liverpool on a free, when they were all clapped onto the pitch, I don't think any of them had a club lined up that we knew about. I think there was maybe rumours of Milner and Brighton that had began to sort of firm up by the time we clapped Milner off, but I don't think there was anything that was signed, sealed, and delivered. So I think it is. Listen, all of it is exceptionally difficult. I don't think there is going to be some sort of big date. I do wonder whether or not the situation around Trent is muddying the waters on bringing the other 2 to complete fruition, because at the minute it sort of helps everyone. There's talk of the 3 of them. One of the reasons why this is intensified a little, intensified a little bit, and John's point about grief that Trent begins to get, and then suddenly his brother's getting dragged into stuff for reasons that no one's got any basis for this, but all of a sudden that sort of gets dropped in and starts to be bandied about a little bit. But what I think is interesting though is that I think it sort of suits Liverpool for there to be 3, because as soon as let's just say hypothetically in the next week it's announced that Van Dijk and Salah are both signed, well, we all know what Arnold's getting asked at every opportunity, and we all know what everyone's writing about, and we all know he's also the player in English football who drives the most clicks and the most controversy. He's also the player who is the most exposed continually in English football.
I was thinking about this. Does it not strengthen? Does it not weaken Trent's hand if the other 2 have signed on the dotted line? Right. Only in to John's point, only in a wider world perception. Trent and his people will still have the same, and the clubs, the 2 clubs will still have their own same sense of what they are or aren't prepared to pay for this player. And this is a big problem here in that there's a legacy issue, though.
Yeah, but I think, there is sort of. But I think that again to John's point, I'll tell you what, Alonso gets away with one, Mascherano doesn't, and Sterling will never be forgiven. And I think those things get set pretty quickly, and it's very difficult to undo them. I feel a little bit like if he's going, then the legacy issue is moot. In that he's not going to have necessarily the legacy that he may want to have, but that's probably already priced into conversations. I think in general because we feel we're part of the PR war, I think we all end up talking I don't just mean the people in this room, I mean literally every Liverpool supporter. I think we all end up sort of focusing on that a little bit too much. I think the reality is there are amounts of money at stake here, opportunities, life choices, career choices, and these are the moving parts. What a few people think of you will be baked in because, certainly we're all human from the Liverpoolian aspect, but it's probably already baked in. I don't think it bakes any differently. I think ultimately the people for whom the PR war is most important, I would argue, are the two clubs in question, because they're the ones who want to be able to tell a certain story to supporters in an ongoing way. But even that, it's always worth saying winning helps, and both of these clubs win a lot. To the other point as well around distractions, it's just sort of, and I thought what John said was absolutely spot on. Bayern Munich at top of the Bundesliga, they're 4 points clear. They've won 11 out of 15.
They've got out on a free.
So they've got out on a free and they're all playing regularly. They've got Alphonso Davies, who's 24, Kimmich, who's 29, and Sané, who's 28. They're all available to go on a free transfer.
As well.
Isn't he Leverkusen?
Oh, sorry, he's gone.
He's Leverkusen Tar, but he's out on a free as well at the end of the season. But they've got 3 going. They don't seem very distracted. They're cracking on the top of the Bundesliga.
Well, they're nice level of footballers, those, but these are our 3 best, I would say.
But I think these are 3 pretty strong Bayern Munich players. And also, you want to do the whole sort of the banging on negligence points. Alphonso Davies would be worth a hell of a lot of money if he was locked down for 4 years.
All right, okay, let's.
It's an interesting one in terms of when people talk about Liverpool, no other club would allow this to happen. No other serious club.
The most important player for Manchester United since the new manager's come in has been Ahmad. He's available on a free.
Yeah.
Where is he?
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, and I think that I've said this on some previous gutters, is I think the Mbappe transfer saga sort of changed the rules of the game a bit because the deal for Madrid got done relatively late there as well.
Yeah.
I do think the other side of however this plays out, we'll all, reset in a sense. So if Liverpool get to ignore my deadline comments for a minute, Liverpool get to March or April and then bag all 3, I doubt we'll ever have the same fucking conversations ever again with the same level of anxiety. Where we may have the Liverpudlian Lionel Messi in 10 years' time who's getting to the end of a 5-year deal with only a month to go. I don't think we'll be as stressed ever again if we see these come over the line. The reason is this is uncharted territory for us, never mind other clubs, but for us as supporters. We had a bit of a saga over Mo's last contract, but it did get within just outside the year to go thing, didn't it? The ones who went before on freeze, the Ginnies of this world, they were lads, we were quite relaxed with them going as supporters. Nobody shed too many tears. It wasn't like, as I said, this is uncharted waters for us as supporters, and this is why it's difficult. And also for those covering Liverpool journalists. Uncharted in much as they're Liverpool's 3 best players, arguably, and they're close to the edge of contracts. We've not quite seen things go this close to the wire. But let's draw a line for a minute and just move into the world of the hypothetical. I don't want to think today about life post Salah and Van Dijk, mainly because I think there won't be life post them in the immediate future. I do think anybody would be naive to say there isn't a very good possibility, not likely, a possibility that we lose Trent this summer. John, how do Liverpool view the possibility of losing Trent? You don't lose him and think, well, there's nothing to do in the market because we got Conor Bradley. You've got a budget. You've got the signing on fee you would have paid him. You've got the excessive wage, which you can sort of amortise back into transfer fee, however you look at it. Do you think Liverpool feel they need to now sign a better right back in the here and now than Conor Bradley? Or do you think they look at the Trent money and just go, well, it just goes in the wider pot and we're strengthening throughout the team? And if so, where are Liverpool? I suppose I'm asking, where do Liverpool put 2 big chunks of money if they lose Trent Alexander? And let's assume Salah and Van Dijk stay. 2 big £80 million fees, hypothetically.
You'd need a right back one, yeah. I'd be shocked if they didn't look at it and go, well, actually, we think it's Conor Bradley and another player who's coming through and they're fine. They will buy a right back. And then I think once you're buying someone and you're Liverpool, you're buying a certain standard of footballer. And so, but I think they probably will back themselves to do that in a way that wasn't sort of breaking the bank. First of all, you can't replace Trent. He's a luxury player. He's what he's doing there. You can't go out and, even if they wanted to, and there's not necessarily, they wouldn't even necessarily want to. They'd maybe look at it and go, right, okay, well, having Trent there was great fun, and added a lot of benefits, but actually we think it's better for this team to have a more standard right back, if you like, someone who did a little bit more right back. And we've seen us play with Conor Bradley and play to a really high level. And so I think, I'm sure they'd love Trent to stay, but I think if he moved on, I don't think you'd necessarily be looking for someone who played right back in a similar sort of wild card style. I think you'd be looking around and going, well, who's actually going to, be more similar to style to Conor Bradley, but maybe a little bit more experienced and just able to offer another player of a very high quality who's able to play in that position. So I think that's what they'd be looking at it. If you ask them to put a value on it, sort of anywhere between 30 and 40 million quid, I think they would feel would get. That's generally where Liverpool have bought, apart from when they've really sort of push the boat out for the likes of Alisson and Van Dijk. And I think they'd be looking for an Alisson and Van Dijk level player. I think they'd be looking at who's out there, who's 22 to 25, who's got profiles really well, who's maybe played in Europe and is able to sort of take the next step up. And if it doesn't quite work out, then when we really like Conor Bradley as well, I think that's the kind of player they'd be looking at. And then to your wages point, that goes into other players, and that might not just be new ones. The thing that Neil brought up Konaté's contract on social last night. There's Diaz's one and stuff like that. These are all contracts that need sorting as well. That when Richard Hughes has sat in Josh's war room before, that they need to sort of consider. It's not just these three lads. It's the other. It's what the fuck does McAllister want paying next? Do you know what I mean? Gravenberg. We've got all these midfielders of a really sort of good age, and so. I mean, listen, they might feel that wages are about to go up a lot and explode, and they might feel that Liverpool's revenue is about to go up a lot, and let's hope that is the case, because then it makes it easier to make sort of decisions around this. But this will all be stuff that they'll need to be conscious of Trent's replacement, if it is, but the contracts of these lads, also the fact that, we've got a good profile of lads, and they've probably come in on decent-ish money and decent, and by that I mean wages, but their next contracts needs factoring in as well, unfortunately, even though that's a bit boring.
Yeah, it's a complex one, thinking ahead to how Liverpool form a broad strategy of needs this summer, Josh. I think I actually felt almost exactly this time last year, maybe tempted fate, when we were top of the league then, not in the same way we are now, but still looking very, very healthy. We were actually doing very, very well with some of the top players out injured. I think Salah was out injured. Trent was out injured. McAllister might have been a Szoboszlai. So we were doing well without top players available to us. And it made me think at the time fuck me, this squad is strong. How do you strengthen it? It's not easy to strengthen it. I wouldn't be surprised, and I did say it out loud in public, I wouldn't be surprised if they buy close to no one this summer. Now, I don't think that was entirely the intention this summer, but that's more or less, Kaiser notwithstanding, what happened. I semi-think that again, but that only applies if all three sign their contracts. So I'm trying to think through how Liverpool are going to be thinking about this. And I'm going to sort of warm to Neil's point early on in the show. I think if I'm Liverpool, what I'm thinking of, certain players in the squad look like they may not want to stay, or we may not actually desire them to stay next season. And they're the lead into where Liverpool formulate their plans for the summer. And I'm going to list them. I think the jury is rightly hugely out on whether Chiesa can contribute to Liverpool in the long run. There's been precious little evidence that he can thus far, unfortunately. I'm very sad about that. I think there is Wataru Endo, despite lovely cameos again this season, is very unlikely to be at Liverpool next season. Not very unlikely, I think fairly unlikely. Although Tsimikas has had possibly his best series of contributions in many respects this season, Andy Robertson, although he's done well at times, does not feel quite the same player. There seems to be, let's put it this way, I think one of our two left-backs aren't here next season. I don't think Wataru Endo's here next season, and I think our cover right winger, Chiesa's not here next season. Do they, I'm sort of leading the answer here because you can totally disagree, do they sort of form the basis of where Liverpool look to recruit and go, well, because it's so complex, because you don't know what's happening with the contracts, so you might as well go, because there's sort of a coincidence, let's just buy a great right winger, let's just look to buy a great left back, let's just look to buy a really good defensive midfielder. And that's before you even talk about whether you want Darwin Núñez or Diogo Jota long run for different reasons.
I think this is where, and it's the sort of, I guess, logic that you don't like being applied to transfers, Robin. It's still logic that a lot of, social media doesn't really like being applied to transfers. Just where Liverpool will be opportunistic and they'll be,
sure,
in terms of players leaving, I think they'll be more reactive rather than proactive. Like they should be proactive around like lads who are getting that old. So like I'd like to think that Liverpool have had their eyes on Virgil van Dijk's replacement. Listen, they could turn around to me if I had access to the war room and say, it's actually Jarell Quansah, and I'd be like, okay, I'm not sure I entirely agree, but I'm also not completely against that. So let's work with that idea. But any other lads coming through, because we only have 4 centre halves, which is now down to 2 fit centre halves now. It's not a great sort of position to be in for Liverpool as well, is it? And that's where I sympathise with the balance they have to strike in terms of, because we signed nobody in the summer. I think that contributes to how good a run we're on. We saw that at the start of the 19-20 season, didn't we, where we didn't sign anybody that summer, at least nobody who upset the apple cart. I think it was Harvey Elliott and Sepp van den Berg, and Liverpool were able to go on a monster run because the team chemistry was so high and all those things. It's a balancing act to strike, really, isn't it? But it's the same balancing act that leaves Liverpool now with 2 fit centre halves. So if I'm able to sort of be in the ear of someone who's doing Liverpool transfers and completely unqualified opinion, obviously it's fair to say, like, I would be saying there must be a centre half who we can go and get in, like, and they'll have their eyes across all of this as well. Like, if Trent Alexander-Arnold is gonna leave in the summer, Liverpool, the sort of sensible conversations that we having will be going, listen, we don't feel like this is completely terminal because we've got Conor Bradley, but if there is a right back out there, and I sort of disagree with John's point in that I don't think it will just be the 20 to 40 million like experience, like, cause I think that probably is just Joe Gomez. Like, I think they probably already think they have that player, and maybe then you need to find a way to commit to Joe Gomez a bit, sit down with him and say, we believe your future at this club, and you can get your X amount of games across centre half and right back. I think it's somewhere from sort of John's 20 million to up to 80 million, because that's what they did with Darwin Núñez, is that, when they felt like Sadio Mane was on the way out, if I've got those timelines correct.
No, you're right.
They brought in Darwin Núñez, Bobby Firmino, they brought in Luis Diaz and things like that. There was always that succession plan of forwards where they were prepared to spend big to make sure they always had a really solid option in those areas, and almost were proactive in that level of planning. So I don't think it will fall necessarily to like the positions of an Endo, a Tsimikas, and I can't remember the third one you mentioned. Was it Chiesa? Was the other one you mentioned? Or I think Chiesa was always a luxury, to be honest. It was always like 5 options is enough, but 6 sounds absolutely brilliant. And if Chiesa can hit the ground running, fine. If not, I mean, we're still top of 2 leagues, aren't we? So we don't really need to be sort of losing any sleep over the fact that Chiesa has not come to the fore. Maybe he will at some point in the season and score a couple of big goals, and that will be his good contribution for 10 million. So I think they'd be looking at it going, let's worry about the sort of contracts first. That centre half situation absolutely isn't ideal, and if we lose another one in Virgil van Dijk, our best one in Virgil van Dijk, then it's a major problem, isn't it? Centre half will be where I'd have most of my sort of eggs, and then you look at a right back, you look at a right sided player if you need to, and again Liverpool will be saying, well, we've got Chiesa now who's not always very fit, but maybe we can sort of cobble through with him and Harvey Elliott into next season. They obviously think big things about Harvey Elliott as well, so it's the bit that you don't like, because it basically involves Liverpool looking at it and going, we don't always like all the new lads, and it's a bit that social media doesn't like, because it's not just new lads, and it's Liverpool going a little bit like, we'll keep our powder dry on this, we'll be opportunistic when the right player comes up. Until then, we feel like we've got a lad who can at least do a job, if not be like, I'm not under any circumstance getting dragged into the Conor Bradley's the next Trent Alexander-Arnold or Harvey Elliott's the next Mo Salah, because they're categorically fucking not.
Yeah,
so
I think as well, sorry Neil, I know you've not spoken on this yet, but I think something else, talk about things that the people sort of don't necessarily like. The other one is younger players, and are they sort of ready to step up? And there's several young players that we've not seen at all this season for a mixture of injury and loan. So up top, you've got Jadon Dance, you've got Kate Gordon, you've got Ben Doak, then you've got Stefan Bajcetic, then
Honey.
You've got he's been around, so maybe not so less him, but then you've got Owen Beck. Now, 4 of those are out on loan to get them sort of experience. They've worked to a varying degree. I think it's a real shame about Kate Gordon, who's not got much minutes at Norwich at all, and a career that looks so promising, has sort of really stalled. But I'm not saying that I want these players starting for next season, but if we're talking about Chiesa being the sixth choice forward, then I don't think it'd be unreasonable to go with them. Actually, look how well Ben Doak's been done at Middlesbrough. He's done exactly what we wanted him to do. Let's maybe think that he can be the sixth choice forward. Or Jane Dance, we love him. He's just been, injured. Is he someone who can sort of do that? Has he got the variety? I don't know. Butetić, again, the loan hasn't gone sort of perfectly from what I agree. I've watched 0 minutes of Salzburg this season, but I'm just basing it on people who have, but then Owen Beck, is he a left back, for the season? And so I think that all comes into it as well. And like I say, I'm not saying that I want these players starting first game of the season, but if we're talking sixth choice forward or even seventh choice centre midfielder, then I think it's not unreasonable to think those players do at least come into consideration.
Okay, and the last question I'm going to put to you, Neil. To Josh's point, I think in a certain sense, supporters don't see as many signings as they want to. Whatever number you want, you don't tend to get it. Well, 9 out of 10 summer windows, you don't get the number you predict at the beginning or hope for at the beginning.
And that is why Kev Walsh hates FSG. Everyone just says
that's why that, yeah. So it tends to come down to it tends to come down to one, and then maybe a punt by the club. I don't know, but I'm going to ask you about where you think the one big signing would be. In as much as last summer, Neil, we saw they showed their hand that they were prepared to spend big on a midfield player in Zubimendi. It could have been that if a defender had come available, they might have put their money there. I think if you polled supporters now and said you've got one big signing for Liverpool this summer, where's your position? Now Josh has gone centre half. Now I guarantee we had 5 others around the room that'd say something else. Personally, I'd buy an attacking player. Just one, because I think you always need great. If I could buy one great player, I'd buy a great attacking player. I think it's more important than a centre half for the reasons that I think there's question marks about Nunes, question marks about Jota's fitness long run, and there's big question marks about Chiesa. And actually, we still don't know where Salah's going to end up. So I would be now heavily targeting a very, very good attacking player, maybe a Kudus or Semenya. I don't know who else, but that's where my money would go. I would have said a midfielder back in August. Gravenberch's changed the landscape a bit. I think even Trainoni, to John's point, has changed the landscape a bit. Centre-back? Well, I don't know. Up till about 3 weeks ago, I was less interested because Konate was flying, Gomez was fine. Kwanzaa, last season's regular, was relegated. It all seemed okay. So, Neil, where do you see the priority position being?
I think where Liverpool will spend the most money in terms of wage and fee is, I think they'll spend the most money on an attacking midfielder who can also play in one of the front 3 positions.
Okay.
That's what I think they'll do.
All right.
And that's also, I mean, maybe it's a bit of bias because it's also what I'd do, but it's what I think that they'll do. And I think that they'll feel as though between Szoboszlai and Jones, they've got 2 tremendous cogs who can be moved around the pitch and can offer different things. If we think a little bit about the way in which Manchester City use Bernardo Silva, this is not me saying that someone's going to come in and suddenly Szoboszlai and or Jones aren't going to play any games. I think they'll probably play around the same amount of games. They'll just be doing it in different areas, and then you'll go from there. I think that, so that's what I think they'll do, because I think it remains the sort of the question in terms of the squad, where at the minute they've got 8 defenders, at the minute they've got 6 forwards, whatever you think on the Chiesa point, but they've only really got 5 midfielders and then Endo and Morton. I think that next season they may well still go into it with 6 midfielders and Endo and Bajcetic. I think the really interesting thing is the manager's now lived one of these. I think he had a certain level of confidence at the start of the campaign around, I don't need that many players. And I do wonder whether or not if he'd have grabbed him the 3rd week of December, he'd have said, I tell you what, I see why the other fella had that many players knocking around.
But he did want a midfielder.
And he did want a midfielder because he wants 6. I think he wants 6 that he feels as though could play in any given Champions League game. Let's just sort of phrase it that way and go from there. And I think it's fair to say, however well Endo has done, he's not classified Endo like that, and Tyler Morton hasn't got a look in. So it wouldn't surprise me if he adds one more.
Morton would have gone, wouldn't he, if this other lad comes in?
I think Morton would have gone. It might have been that they might have looked at Endo going, but I think that even now, I think, for instance, next season, if you were to do what I'm describing, but we think there's a tune out of Bajcetic over the course of the campaign, there'd be a pragmatic argument to say, but we're also going to keep Endo until January because we're going to want that idea of another support midfielder if we need him.
The Trainoni factor as well. Is the Kobe Mainu last season type potential there? Could he have a breakout year next year?
I think they're going to want to manage. So I think that the difference between the way Liverpool want to do young players and the way Manchester United have done, Mainu is now getting knocks, doesn't look fit, doesn't look like he can get around the pitch.
Been overplayed, yeah.
So I think that Liverpool will bleed this stuff in over a period of time. I don't think you're just going to sort of see it go bang next season and suddenly Naoni is getting 30 starts. Even if he does brilliantly, I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think that Naoni just sort of probably has a similar role that he's had to this. And I think that in terms of the other areas, I think there's just a little bit of interplay. Like, for instance, I think Liverpool may decide that they're prepared to run with Bradley and someone. Well, Ola Aina is on a free. Yeah, he's on a free this summer. So Liverpool might think, you know what? Let's move Shimikas on, go big on a left back because we think we can get a really good left back. That's where we put the money. We get Aina in on a free and he sort of replaces Shimikas a little bit, if you almost know what I mean. We back Bradley and then we've got a really responsible backup who's proven at top Premier League level in Aina on the one hand. We've got Bradley who we're backing and we're going to put some money and we're going to buy a new first choice left back and move Robertson down the pecking order. I think there is a possibility that they buy another centre back and decide to say to Joe Gomez, not dissimilar to my sort of Endo point, but in a much more involved way, we're backing Bradley, but we've got you and we know that you're brilliant, and if we needed to use you in this area, we'd get the very best out of you.
Aina's on a free, is
yeah, and you end up in a situation where you can say, so Gomez and a new lad are battling it out to back up Konate, and Quansah's just going to be managed a little bit more over the course of the campaign, maybe do a bit both sides. I think a lot of these is down to sort of the assessment, but if you're asking me where I think Liverpool will end up putting money, I think it'll be on a footballer who plays as an attacking midfielder, but who can also do stuff in one of the front three positions as well. And it may well be that that's with the ad. So, for instance, it wouldn't surprise me if there's
describing Kudus and Marmouche
and a couple of the other lads they've been linked with loads. You know, there's a number of footballers. João Pedro. There's a number of footballers with Liverpool who've been linked with loads, and it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool let either of the two lads who play centre forward go. Likely to be Nunez, but not necessarily Nunez. And we end up being told they've not replaced him, but they brought another player in who's an attacking midfielder who also plays up front in the front three. And the idea is they're going to, from what the manager's seen this season and what he's enjoyed, they're going to rotate that a little bit in there, because I still think there's a fair chance that if, for instance, Chiesa does manage to get some time on the pitch and proves his fitness, I think there's a fair chance he spends some of that time playing as a central forward. So I think I think Liverpool may well just end up a little bit back to this idea of a lot of lads who are sort of, even if they play in wide areas or in central areas, who are quite 9.5-y. And there might be another lad who plays attacking midfield that they go and buy who's also can be construed to be a little 9.5-y.
Okay, we'll wrap. I would bet the farm on Kulusevski if we could prize him from Tottenham.
I just don't think Liverpool will be bothered to negotiate with Levy. His contract's 2028. I had a look at it over the Christmas period, Rob. I put some effort in.
How old is he?
He's young. He's 24. Yeah.
I mean, I think he's just a hell of a player in the profile we'd like, but I agree with you. The Levy thing. Okay, I think the gutter's off to a flyer. We can see the awards on the horizon. They're not with us yet, but I think we've made the right moves in the right direction. Thank you, John. Thank you, Josh. And thank you, Neil. And we'll see you all again, I'm presuming, very soon.